This week on Hometown Ghost Stories. October is finally here, and we can think of no better way to kick off our favorite month of the year than to present to you another group of stories from our listeners. Every terrifying tale that you will hear tonight are true stories, never before heard, submitted by our listeners. Join us as we dive into more terrifying ghost stories that you've never heard on this episode of Hometown Ghost Stories.
Hometown Ghost Stories contains serious and often distressing events and is not intended for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Last summer, my in-laws moved into a new house. This house is over 200 years old and is one of the original houses in the neighborhood. When my in-laws were buying the house, I would joke with them that it's haunted. Last April, while they were away, my wife and I would go over to let their dogs out and feed them. While over there at night, I would get a weird, creepy feeling like I wasn't alone. One particular evening, when I went to let the dogs out, I noticed that the porch light was on. It's not one of those automatic lights, and no one else had been over there that day, and I definitely was not the one that turned it on. In my head, I was thinking it could have been one of the pets, the mischievous cat perhaps. However, he had never done this before, or since. And the other thing is, the switch is in an awkward position above the couch, making it hard to reach. The dogs definitely wouldn't have been able to get to it, and the cat would have had to jump or stretch up and hit the switch. It's unlikely, but it is probable. What happened a few nights later is the experience that terrified me the most, though. When I went over to let them out one last time, I heard faint music coming from the house. This particular music sounded like 1920s big band music. For those unfamiliar, think the music from the original Shining, or the music that plays in the lobby of the Tower of Terror ride at Disney. As I walked up to the porch, I thought my in-laws might have left the TV or radio on. But as I approached, I remember that I was the last one in the house and had never turned anything on. As I got closer to the house, the music seemed to stop. The only thing I could hear at this point was the air conditioner and the dog crying in the house. I thought maybe the music was my imagination. Everything in the house seemed fine, but I still had that creepy feeling. Shortly after, as I walked out the door to leave, I kept thinking of how it was all in my head. To be sure, I stopped halfway to my car to listen to the air conditioner and the dog that started crying again to see if it sounded like the music. It was not the sound I heard as I had pulled up to the house. As I walked back to the car, convinced that I was crazy, I began to hear that same music again. Stories submitted by Discord member 2600, somewhere in New Hampshire. I'm Rob Coakley, and these are your Hometown Ghost Stories.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Hometown Ghost Stories, terrifying ghost stories you've never heard, part 8, listener submitted stuff. I'm Jesse Wilkins. I'm joined by Rob Coakley. Hello, Rob.
We are here for another listener episode. These are some people's favorite episodes as we get to hear so many different tales, not just from around the country, but even sometimes from around the world.
It absolutely is. And we're also joined by Dave as spooky season officially kicks off.
It is official today, and I'm very excited.
Yes, we've been calling it spooky season since I would say the middle of August. But you know what?
July
All
5th.
Yeah, all year long.
May
Was that when we
2nd.
started? All year long is spooky season here at Hometown Ghost Stories. Big shout out to Brenda C, who donated 20 Hometown Ghost Stories memberships in Super Chat. Thank you so much. If you got a gifted, make sure you say thank you. And I'm excited to hop into this one. We are fresh off the plane, very tired from our long journey. We went down south, as many of you know, down to New Orleans. What a trip it was. Stay tuned for New Orleans content, as there will be so much, because I feel like we could dedicate an entire podcast and not even get close to covering all of the things in New Orleans for many years. There's so much.
So many different cities claim to be the most haunted city in the world, and I honestly think this one probably is, at least in the United States, it's right at the top of all the lists.
It's got to be up there. It's so much. But
We could go back.
I plan to go back.
I'm going to go back. Yeah,
I will
I had a
definitely go
blast.
back. Not even just for the ghost stuff. I mean, what a fun city that is. Food, absolutely amazing. People
I'm bringing
are
better
amazing.
shoes next time, though. I forget that we're getting old, and I start. I'm almost 40. By the end of this trip, I was walking like I was 95. So, I'm making sure that I bring better foot attire everywhere I go going forward.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yep. A lot of walking on those trips. A lot of
JD
walking.
asks, how was the hurricane? And the hurricane completely missed New Orleans, which was pleasant for us, but we do hope that everybody who was affected by it is doing okay. We know a couple of listeners that were definitely affected by it, that we are thinking about you guys. So keep us posted on how everybody is in those areas. And yeah, thinking about you.
Absolutely. If you were affected by the hurricane, reach out and we'll see what we can do. Dana says, how many parts will the New Orleans series be? It'll be at least 2.
70.
Maybe some side content as well. I was like, honestly, we threw that idea out there. Like, we could do the whole month of October on New Orleans, but I don't want people to tune into week 3 of New Orleans. Be like, seriously, this again? Yeah. So we'll do back to back, where we did do some investigations. And we also just did some general exploring of the city, did a ghost tour. Dave did an alligator tour, which I was super jealous that I couldn't go on, but we had the cemetery booked the same day. So Dave went solo into the bayou to find alligators, but we'll leave those stories for our New Orleans episode. But before we hop into some more of these listener ghost stories, I do want to mention that we have before that our shows are coming up. We have one show in Weymouth, Massachusetts, October 18th, a live show. So if you want to come see us, hang out, see some listeners, it'll be at a brewery. You can have some beer. If you don't drink, that's okay. There'll be giveaways. There will be opening acts. There will be all sorts of fun things. So make sure, if you are free and you want to join us, October 18th, the link for those tickets is in the show notes. You can buy your tickets now and start planning your trip. And if you want to feel crazy and go to more events the following weekend, Block Island, back-to-back nights, paranormal investigations on Block Island, you get to investigate with us. So if you're new to paranormal investigating and you want to try it out, this is a great place to do it. One of the most haunted islands in the world, some say. And not only that, it's going to be a lot of fun. And you don't have to be new. If you're a seasoned investigator, come along, bring some tools, bring some equipment. We do have plenty of stuff that we're going to bring there. So don't feel like if you don't have stuff, you're not going to be able to participate. We will have plenty of equipment to go around and try it out and see what we can find on haunted Block Island. We're very excited about that. So
We're definitely bringing at least one tool.
yes. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited for that.
We are tired. The jokes aren't going to get better.
It's been a long week. Certainly has. But I say we hop into some of these listeners submitted ghost stories. We have a bunch to go through tonight. Again, if you haven't gotten yours read yet and you do have a ghost story, send it in. Send it in again if you sent it in before, so we can get refreshed on who we haven't covered yet. And and if you haven't sent one in, think about doing that. You can send it over Discord. You can send it via email and let us know what you think.
One of the ones that we're covering tonight was sent in a while ago, and they sent it in again, said, hey, just wanted to remind you guys that this is here. And it was a really good story. It's anonymous, but we're going to share that one this week. And I'm glad. So if you have sent one in and you still haven't heard it on any of these episodes, resend it. We'll get you on the next one.
Well, I feel like you queued it up, so why don't we just jump right into that one?
Sure. Do you want to talk about the one we just told as the opener?
Oh yeah, let's touch on that.
We should probably talk about that.
Yeah.
Also anonymous. Well, kind of anonymous. He's Discord member 2600 sent in this creepy story about hearing haunting music. And I don't want to keep talking about New Orleans, but me and Jesse heard haunting music following us one day in New Orleans. It just would not stop.
I think they were having an everyone get together and play the recorder poorly festival.
Yeah, it might have been the worst thing I ever heard in my life, and it just wouldn't stop. But we never saw the source. So
Reminds me of that Amityville haunting where the marching band just played really out of tune, marched
Yes.
around.
yeah, that's exactly what it was. And
But-
it just
But
wouldn't-
significantly worse.
yeah, just the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. But this is in a house coming from an actual house that he was, taking care of for his in-laws, and to just hear that sound coming from the house, it reminded me of the Bridgewater house where he's like, oh, I must have left the TV on or something like that to hear this particular noise. And then he walks in and it's not on. And then as he leaves the house again, it starts back up. It was pretty creepy. He did try to debunk it. He said that there was sort of like a VFW close by, but there was no event that night, I believe. It just was a very terrifying story. And it was an old house in New Hampshire. So very close to us.
That is close.
Could be close. Might be a little bit further away depending on where, but the anonymous said somewhere in New Hampshire. So it is a mystery.
It is a mystery. We will solve it one day. But yeah, I thought it was a great way to kick this off, to just start this with a haunted house. So
Absolutely.
we're going to get into a bunch of different other haunted locations, but the core for me is always a very spooky haunted house.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. Nothing quite like a good haunted house story.
Correct.
Absolutely. We have quite a few of them today. Let's hop into our first one here. This one is another anonymous one. Let's check it out.
I've always second-guessed myself as to whether or not I've actually experienced things. But looking back on it, I believe I have actually seen things that could only be explained as paranormal. There was a house on my land that was supposedly torn down in the 80s. I think it was the 50s or the 60s because of the types of trash and items that I found where the house was. Rumor has it, and I can't get access to historical documents to prove it, that the owners of the property had slaves. And any time a slave would misbehave too badly, they would end up under the house. Rumor also had it that after the Civil War, the owners would take in travelers, and some of them wouldn't leave. All the rumors about the house were told to me by old-timers, all who have since died. Back when they told me about it, I wasn't interested in the paranormal, so unfortunately, I never got more details. Most of what I see is something big out of the corner of my eye where the house used to be, or orbs that float 5 to 7 feet off the ground. I've only ever seen the orbs at night, but I know it's not an animal, because animals are much closer to the ground. I've only ever seen the orbs a handful of times in the last 5 to 6 years. Also, the orbs are the size of basketballs, so I know it's not a bug. The most striking thing I've ever seen, however, was a person dressed in brown, colored like an old photo, walking through the tree line. The most distinct time I can remember was when I was picking strawberries. I listen to things while I work, like y'all's podcast. That day, though, I was listening to Toby Keith's American Soldier, and I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I stood up and turned my head. I saw the man in brown. He was about 10 feet from me and walking like he was stalking something through the woods. He was a little bit translucent and walked right through a tree. He never looked at me directly, and whenever he did look in my direction, it was like he didn't see me at all. I almost shit myself. I watched him for probably 5 minutes before I saw him go into a big tree. I haven't seen him since. That is, unless he is the orbs that I have also seen. Story sent in anonymously from South Carolina.
All right, we had a haunted forest. Oh no, we had a haunted house, and now we have a haunted forest. What a cool story.
Haunted farm.
Farm, but yeah, there was the ghost was coming out of the forest that surrounds the farm. The person sent in this picture. Let me see if I can share it real quick. Present.
We were very well prepared for this.
Yeah, well, everyone could hear me, the sounds of me typing very loudly while we wait.
Yes.
So this is the property here. You can see it. They sent it in. Then what's circled in red is where the old house was when things happened there. It's usually in the shadows, and they don't fully catch it. Then what's circled in blue, that's the tree line where the translucent man in brown would walk out of the woods. They said that they've seen him there 3 or 4 times, and the purple area is where they see the orbs. Now, the orbs I thought was pretty interesting because they were like big, like
Big.
basketball sized. And a
Yeah.
lot of times people like to dismiss or write orbs off as camera glitches or malfunctions or just like lens flares, but you're seeing them in person with no lens. So there's really, obviously it has nothing to do with the camera lens if there's no camera involved. So it's weird. It's definitely a weird situation, and also strange for the orbs to be seen in the same area that the apparition is seen. So
The orbs being so large, we don't hear that too often. The only times I can think of that is when we talk about like ghost lights,
Mhm.
like we did, and I believe it was Maryland and I believe the Surrency poltergeist case as well,
Mhm.
where the orbs are rather large and they're, considered a whole different type of entity. So I wonder, I'd love to see him because I really like to compare them to the normal orbs that we're used to seeing, right? You know what I
Right.
mean? So that's intriguing. But a man coming out of the forest and they've seen him several times.
Yeah, and he's transparent and walks through trees, which is a particularly creepy detail, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, being transparent is one thing, but walking through the trees and it's got to be a ghost. There's no other explanation.
Mhm.
Big shout out to Tess P gifting 20 memberships in Super Chat. Mother McTibbles also donated $1.99 in Super Chat, and Chris C became a member. So thank you guys so much for the donations and joining up. But if you got a little gifted membership there, make sure you thank Tess. And thanks to that was another anonymous one. Thanks to the anonymous person who sent in that story as well. That was another good one.
I wonder
Absolutely.
if it's a residual haunting, or as it seems like they're always walking out of that forest line. So
Yeah,
I
that
wonder-
particular detail wasn't specified. Just said that they had seen it 3 or 4 times, and then the one example they gave was when it was walking through the forest, walked through a tree, walking towards the person who sent us the story, and which the weird detail is said it was looking, didn't quite make eye contact, but was looking through them. I thought that was creepy also.
terrifying. It does sound residual though, doesn't it? Like maybe they're
Absolutely.
just consistently reliving a journey or something, or even maybe it's somebody that owned the property before them that could be making that same walk. So it
Yeah,
feels
they're
very residual.
just
Mhm.
making their rounds or something, like groundskeeper or just farmer or something, and anybody could be going through there.
Yeah.
Eric brings up that it could be the stone tape theory. I've never heard of that. We might have to go over that on the show sometime.
Yeah.
Go over it in depth right now. I would if we had more time, but we got a lot of other videos to get to.
We do. All right. So I'll bring up the next one here. We're going to go into a story by Stephen V, who sent it in. And we were like, you know what? I think we might have covered that one because it was an older one. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to go through every Listener Ghost story and see if we covered it. So I'm pretty sure we haven't covered this one, but we're going to throw it in there, see what happens. This one's from Stephen V.
Bardstown, Kentucky, spring of 1991. We all probably remember our first funeral, the loved one that we lost, how we felt, the emptiness and the tears. But for me, it's the paranormal. I didn't know that I had a paranormal experience at the time, but now when I think about it, it scares me to my core. This being the first funeral I ever attended, my 11-year-old self had to get out of there. The body of my grandma, all of the crying, sad people, the casket, all this running through my mind was too much. Outside, I felt better. Next door to the funeral home, I saw a little white house with an inviting backyard surrounded by a wooden fence. A swing set. Perfect, I thought. As I made my way through the old wooden gate, I sat on the swing collecting my thoughts. I felt 2 hands on my back. At first, I thought it was one of my cousins, until I heard an unfamiliar female voice say, "Need a push?" Then another female voice say, "Do you like our playground?" Turning around, I saw two girls about my age, their blonde hair glowing in the sunlight. Twins, I thought to myself. They looked identical, from the way they had their ponytails to their matching blue and white dresses. They asked me, "What are you doing here?" I told them, "I came over from the funeral home. I was at my grandmother's funeral." They said they played with a lot of kids that came over from the funerals, and that everyone thinks that their playground was for the funeral home. We played together for about another half hour or so, until the time came for me to go, when I heard my mother calling my name from next door. I told my newly found friends goodbye and hurried through the wooden gate back to the funeral home. The funeral went on like most of them do. Fast forward a couple of years. I'm 13 years old and back at another funeral at the same funeral home where my grandmother was. I go outside and see the little white house next door to the funeral home, thinking of the twins that I had played with a couple years ago. I went through the wooden gate to the backyard, but this time it looked different. It was not inviting as the previous time I was there. The old wooden fence was falling down in places. The playground area had tall weeds, and the swing that I played on was only hanging from one chain. I made my way to the back door. To me, it didn't look like anybody had been in or out of it in quite some time. I knocked on the door and waited for a while until I could hear someone making their way to the door. As it opened, it wasn't the twin girls, but it was an older lady with white hair and a long pink nightgown. I said to her, "I'm sorry to bother you, but I was at a funeral next door and was checking to see if the twins could come out and play." She looked at me in disbelief and stared at me for what I thought was an eternity. Then what she said sent chills down my spine to this day. "Honey, the twins have been dead for 40 years. Listener submitted ghost story from Stephen V.
Welcome back, folks, and thank you, Stephen, for that ghost story. Absolutely terrifying. We have ghost children. Ghost children are always scary. And that story was sad on so many levels. Rest in peace to your grandmother, of course. And then those two little girls. That's a sad one as well.
It is.
And the haunting is terrifying. I mean, like, you just go to play on a swing set, you get two hands on your back pushing you, and then it's like, I wonder if it was like a time slip thing, not just a haunting, because he said he was back at a funeral within 2 years, and the house looked like a whole lot more run down since then.
Mm-hmm.
Swing set was, one swing was like dangling by one chain. The wooden fence was looking old. The back door looked like it hadn't been opened in years. And it was pretty clearly a haunting if you think about it, because you have the grandmother. I would assume it's the grandmother, maybe the mother. Who
Could be the mother. If you think it's a time slip, that could be the mother at a much, as an older woman, and the time slip was years before.
Maybe, yeah, I guess either one could be. But I would say what he experienced was some sort of a time slip or a haunting where he experienced these two girls that were very real. I mean, they pushed him on the swing and everything. He felt their hands on their back. He was talking to them. Didn't sound like he thought it was anything paranormal at the time. So which one is the paranormal experience? The first one or the second one? I don't know, but I would assume the first one.
And twins are terrifying in general. Like, you just can't trust them, right, Dave?
Yeah. Very untrustworthy.
But yeah, the man, what a creepy story. Right next to a funeral home too. So I do wonder, are they spirits from? I would assume they're spirits from the house. Well, yeah, probably, right? Because she said that they died 40 years ago. What a scary and sad story. Yeah, it's wild.
Yes, absolutely terrifying. Swing sets and graveyards and scary houses. It hits like, a trifecta of spooky locations within a 2-minute story.
The old woman might have been a very nice looking old lady, but when we generate AI images, it always makes them look absolutely horrifying no matter what you type in. So that's what you got. Horrifying old lady. That's it.
Well, old people are scary in general.
They can be. They can be. So that was that story. Thanks again to Stephen V. I don't think we covered that on the show yet. I think that was a new tale to me, but very scary stuff. Eric says, did the twins die at the same time? I don't have any information on the twins other than the fact that the lady had said that they died 40 years prior.
That sounds like they died at the same time, but that is a weird detail and actually a pretty interesting question, because you'd think I don't know. I guess you'd assume that a ghost would be haunting the time that they died. So if they died at different ages, maybe they would appear as different ages, but they appear as the same age, unless it's a residual haunting, right? And it's just a playback of a memory from when they were kids. So
Well, I mean, I guess it could be, but they did communicate and asked if the kid needed a push. And
Right.
then the other one was talking to him as well. So it seems more like an intelligent haunted on this one.
Yeah. Pretty creepy. Weird either way.
But it gets so eerie with like, you know, and within 2 years, if you don't take care of your property, it could start to look pretty bad, especially with the weeds being overgrown. But the swing falling apart and the fence looking run down all of a sudden, and then the back door looking like it had been opened in years. Like it just and plus the detail of the fact that they died 40 years prior when he just saw them 2 years ago. So it definitely is a creepy one on so many levels.
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely. I'm never saying absolutely again, because then we say it at the same time and it's real weird. And
Absolutely.
God damn it.
All right. We want to go into Rachel B's story, maybe?
Let's do it.
All right. Next one is from legendary member of the Hometown Ghost Stories family, Rachel B.
I work as a nurse in a hospital. After weeks of trying, I finally found a quiet place to take a break in the building that I work at. It's only on weekends, but the old SCCU has been converted to an ultrasound department. The only way to get in or out of that department is by loud double doors with push plates on the wall. All of the doors have at least an inch gap between door and floor. If there's anyone moving around in the hallway next to surgery, you can hear them with how they did the renovations. You can't be in there without being heard. I was taking the trash out of the break room tonight before I finished my shift, and a dark shadow moved across the gap under the door. There were no footsteps, just a shadow moving. No light, no sound, nothing more than a shadow. After my heart went back to its normal rhythm, I opened the door. Nobody was in that department. The double doors were closed, and there was no sound of any person, and nothing hanging from the ceiling. I almost peed my pants trying to sneak back out of that place. Story submitted by Rachel B., Grand Forks, North Dakota.
Another good one from Rachel B. Hospital.
Yeah.
I feel like every hospital on the planet should be haunted.
Well, hospitals specifically, we get stories from people, and I'm not saying Rachel's this person, because clearly Rachel has had paranormal experiences, but a lot of doctors and nurses will pull you aside and be like, listen, I don't believe in ghosts. They're not real. But here's the ghost I saw at the hospital. and they're so convinced that they saw the ghost at the hospital, and and they tell these stories. It's been a few different people that have worked at hospitals that have started their stories like that to me on our, like when we go out and, people find out about the show, they just like, hey, I work at this hospital. Here's what's happened in this hospital to me. So
it's a common thing to happen with hospital employees, and we get a lot of hospital related listener submitted ghost stories. I think there's been 5 or 6 probably, and it's actually really common. And there's a lot of great Reddit threads about people who work in hospitals that share their stories about unusual events, particularly in like the trauma ward and things like that.
Yeah,
it seems to be a staple. You got a hospital story. We seem to get a lot of grandparents visiting you stories, which are usually heartwarming, sometimes terrifying, sometimes a little bit of both. And you get a lot of hotel stories. Mm-hmm. And those just seem to be the most common. And there's no reason for it not to be.
But it's not the one that people ever think of. Like when you think of haunted like locations, the hotels, the asylums, the graveyards, the houses, people don't usually, turn to actual hospitals. And then once you think of it, it's like, man, they probably are more haunted than any other type of location on the planet, to be fair. I mean, where's more trauma happened than an actual hospital?
Yeah. Right. Micah brings up jails. Jail's another big one. But I got to think of all of these. I mean, there's no more death than at a hospital, maybe a battlefield. But I mean, there's people dying in hospitals every day, every hour. Like, it's got to be a place that is a recipe for hauntings for sure.
And that shadow person could be so many different people. You'll never track down who's actually behind that haunting, most likely, unless you get a real clear image or you get a real good medium and some sort of EVP. It's going to be real tough to figure out who actually is haunting, if it is just one person haunting that area of the hospital.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. Like, you never know who's haunting what, unless you get one that just keeps doing the same thing over and over again, or if there's some identifying features, if you're seeing a full-bodied apparition or something. But got to be tough to tell.
Yes.
All right, let's hop into our next one.
My grandfather was a taxi driver in San Francisco for 40 years, mainly in Chinatown. The San Francisco Chinatown is the oldest and one of the largest in North America. This is a true story he shared with me when I was a kid. It was a cold, rainy night in March of 1977. I was driving my old yellow cab like I always did back in those days. It was a harsh night. The raindrops were pelting the side of my cab in bursts with each gust of wind. Most people were either indoors or under canopies. There was almost nobody in the streets for obvious reasons. At times, my windshield wipers could barely keep up with the rain, even on the highest setting. I was approaching one of my usual pickup spots, half expecting it to be empty, when I saw a woman standing on the sidewalk. She was just standing there in the rain, in a traditional Singaporean dress, with no umbrella or hat or nothing. Just completely drenched, with her hair wet, hanging down, dripping past her shoulders. I pulled over to the side of the road and reached over to crank down the window just enough to ask if she needed a lift. She didn't say a word, just walked up to the cab, opened the door, and slid into the back seat. I rolled the window back up and headed up Grant Ave towards the Dragon Gate. I shut the fare meter off, figuring I'd just do a nice thing for the poor lady. I asked where she was headed and glanced in the rearview mirror. I was, of course, completely shocked to see that there was nobody in the back seat. I stopped the car and turned around, sliding the petition open to get a better look. The back seat was empty, but the fabric of the seat was still wet from where she had been sitting. It was the first time I had stopped the car since I picked her up, and I definitely would have noticed if she had opened the door and jumped out while it was still moving. The thought of it haunted me for the rest of the night. I didn't sleep a wink after my shift. The next morning I headed out again for another shift. I drove around for a little while as the sun came up. I stopped for a hot cup of tea at the usual corner spot. I got back in the cab and headed back up the main road. I adjusted the mirror and almost jumped out of my skin when I saw the same woman from the night before sitting in the back seat. She was dry now and looked pleasant, whereas last night she had looked dismal and depressed. I hadn't even had a chance to consider how she had gotten there when she whispered, "Thank you," before smiling and disappearing. My grandfather used to tell me this story all the time, and we always used to theorize about its meaning. Most of my family members agree that the woman had been a ghost who was trapped, unable to cross over. Maybe she was killed on that corner while waiting for a ride, and when my grandfather picked her up, she was able to cross over, but not without saying thank you first. Story sent in by Lee from San Francisco.
Thank you, Lee, for that story. Yeah, I think I would have, the second time, I would have taken the vehicle and just driven it off a cliff.
Yeah.
Without me inside. Stop worrying about us, YouTube. We keep getting flagged for being, they're worried about us. They're sending us these emails like, "Are you sure you guys are okay?
You all right?
You guys talk about a lot of dark things." Like, yeah, dude, read the name of the show. What do you expect? Big shout out to Nicholas M for joining up as a member on YouTube. Thank you for joining.
Also, big shout out to YouTube. We love you. Please don't delete our channel ever.
That would probably be the end of the show, right? That's where I just throw up my things and
that would be
a haunted hospital.
That would be a tough one to recover from.
It would.
We have the backup channel with 200 subscribers. Go subscribe to Hometown Ghost Story Reviews. I know we don't push it, but God, please, we're begging you. We have families to feed.
Yeah,
That's right.
So the story's scary. The story's scary. The first initial story with the rain picks her up in the rain. She disappears. You get that a lot with like hitchhiker stories. You pick up hitchhikers and then they disappear out of your back seat. Creepy stuff.
Yeah, it was scary, but it also kind of had a sort of a happy ending if you go with their theory there. And they're just, as they said, they're just theorizing this. And the theory is that the ghost was maybe killed in an accident on that corner where she stands, and the cab driver picked her up, and that was what she needed. Her whatever completed her mission or whatever you want to call it, which she was able to help her cross over, which is why that she came back the next day and thanked him before disappearing. So if that's the theory, and I like the theory, then happy ending.
That is kind of cool. You hear about these crossing over stories, and a lot of times they're just gone for good, right? Now, we heard a story while we were in New Orleans from Jen from New Orleans Paranormal, and she had told us about I'll let her tell it on the show when she comes on, but she was mentioning that they had helped the spirit cross over, but the spirit was like nervous about crossing over, and however they were communicating with him, the spirit had said basically like, but I still want to come back and visit from time to time. And they're like, that's fine, or whatever. I'm like, I didn't know that's how these things worked, but we're still learning about a lot of these things, and it helps to have experts to kind of help us along with these things. So the spirit coming back to revisit and say thank you, that's kind of evidence of what we just learned this weekend. But
yeah,
very cool.
Yeah, the thing was cool.
Still creepy. And it's a different element too, where it's not just you picked up a hitchhiker and the hitchhiker disappeared, but she left like a physical trail of the seat being all wet from standing in the rain. So that's a little bit different.
Yeah, that was an important detail.
Changes too. She's like disheveled the night before and then like put back together the following day.
Yeah.
So it's sort of symbolism there as well.
Right. They said the whole disposition was different, where it was gloomy and depressed at first, and then happy and gracious the second time. Yeah. Which I think is where they came up with the theory that was what the ghost needed to cross over.
Sure.
Yeah. Cool stuff.
Very
Could
cool
make sense.
Story.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. I have my next one here is from Lily. And Lily's had her stories on a few of these episodes, and they're always good. And this is another one from the legendary Lily. Let's check it out.
My cousin Kelly and her son Link watch my son Drew every so often when I need help, and on Thursdays. Well, last week they came over and stayed the night Wednesday night. They slept in our room because I had all of the baby stuff to sleep downstairs. Last night, we were all downstairs just hanging out, and Link fell asleep. Dylan went up to bed, so me and Kelly were just chatting, and I was getting ready to go upstairs, and kind of out of nowhere, Kelly goes, "So, the last time we stayed over, Link was talking to a blue lady in your room?" I convinced him that she was a Smurf and put on the Smurfs to get him to come lay down and go to bed. Immediately, I saw it in the back of my brain and spiraled because not a soul has ever actually seen her besides me. So I had convinced myself that I was just crazy this whole time. Link is 3 years old, so we don't talk about my ghost whatsoever with him. He doesn't know about it at all, but he talks to his grandpa, who passed away when he was a baby. Somehow he knows his name and everything, and they just play in his room all the time. The biggest problem is that she, Linda, is a blue lady. The one that we're pretty sure drowned because she has off-color blue-green tinted skin, and I struggled getting to sleep. 2 days ago, I had a dream that someone was in my house throwing stuff. As a mom, I had the constant "they're gonna take or hurt the baby" feeling, and it woke me up. After I woke up, it sounded like someone was shuffling things downstairs, to the point where I woke my husband up to go check it out, because I've been paranoid listening to it for about an hour, and I wanted to be safe. As soon as he woke up, it stopped. No shuffling, no footsteps, and I was, quote, just being paranoid. I went back to sleep and dreamed that Linda was standing over Dylan, staring at him. It didn't feel angry, but it wasn't happy. Listener submitted ghost story from Lily.
Well, that's a cliffhanger.
Right?
A little bit. Yeah, it seems to be like an ongoing haunting that Lily has been experiencing, where she's been seeing this blue lady for I don't know how long, which is just terrifying. And not just because it's your typical, you have your lady in white, you have your lady in blue, lady in red at some places. Usually the lady in blue is just wearing a blue dress. But the blue lady is blue because she has this like bluish gray skin. So she thinks that it's maybe from the ghost of someone who drowned. It's just so scary. And then it's like, okay, so she's been experiencing this forever for however long. And then a kid experienced it as well, sees the same thing. I love the parental reaction of like, oh, don't worry about it. It was just one of the Smurfs. Let's watch some Smurfs and go to bed.
Yeah.
The Smurfs shouldn't be visiting the children. That might scare me even more.
Especially because we just ate in a restaurant the other day. We had breakfast and the Smurfs were on, and I forgot that the animation was not great on the Smurfs. I was watching. I'm like, I watched this as a kid, and it looked way better on the small tube TVs that had a little bit of fuzz with it. HD has not aged some of these cartoons well.
Yeah, I was just going to say that HD hasn't been good for some of the older cartoons.
Yeah, but at least it's still not as scary as a blue lady appearing and your child seeing it. We talk about this with children all the time. Going back to my brother, like they don't even know what ghosts are, so they're reacting just by saying what they see, right? Not knowing what that actually is. They think it's just a thing, and they point it out, and it's way more terrifying when they're pointing it out.
It really is. Now, that wasn't her kid, I believe, in the story. I think it was her friend's kid, which is what kind of set her off. Like, why is my friend's child seeing this? I think her child is much younger, but still terrifying and just strange validation that the haunting is real. It's not just her mind playing tricks on her. And then you get this other night where it's not all nightmares. She's hearing things going on, some shuffling around the house. When she wakes up her husband then it all stopped. It's almost like whatever was in the house knew that it only wanted to scare her or something, but it's also appearing to the kid. I don't really have answers for this one. This is just a scary story, and I hope that it doesn't affect Lily negatively, so it's terrifying stuff.
Yeah.
We've heard ghost stories in the past where you have a ghost of a woman who comes back and almost acts as a protector of a newer baby. And you got to wonder if maybe this ghost was a maternal figure, and now that they kind of, if it's an intelligent or somewhat of a residual haunting, if they're going through the motions in a house where there's a new baby.
Yeah. From everything that she's told us, though, it does not feel residual.
No.
It feels like a lot more is going on there.
True.
So I do hope that they figure that out at some point in the near future.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those situations where I'm like, because we're always trying to study this stuff and find evidence of the paranormal, that I'm always like, wow, I wish there was something like that I could document and record and try to get evidence of. But at the same time, it sounds horrifying and it sounds like a terrible time. So we're sorry you're going through that, Lily. I hope that gets resolved somehow. Did the story have a location? Tess asks. I'm not entirely sure. Lily sent a few stories in, so I'm assuming it's the same as before, but I'm sure you could reach out with her on Discord.
Pretty sure she's in Michigan.
Michigan? Okay.
Yeah.
We'll get her address. Yeah. We'll post it. Not sure.
Get her mother's maiden name. We'll get all of it for you. Whatever you need, just let us know.
So coming up next, I think we jump into Savannah.
Sure.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Within the span of under 2 years, 2 of my dad's very close friends died in separate shootings. Shortly after these events, my father was driving around with my brother Sean, who was 4 or 5 at the time. As they were driving, Sean sat up straight in the back seat and pointed his finger out the window. "That's where your friend died," he said to my father. My dad's mouth dropped. He was stunned. It was, in fact, where one of his friends had been shot, and my brother would have no way of knowing that. Around this same time frame, my mother went into labor. The kicker is that she had a cryptic pregnancy, meaning she didn't know she was pregnant at all until she was in active labor. We all would joke that my dad's 2 friends had a hand in it and sent him to us. Last year, a few of my family members went on a day trip and left my youngest brother Connor, who who was 4 at the time, at home with my grandmother. On our way home, we got a phone call from my grandmother saying that Connor had seen a man in the house. She had looked all around, but there was no signs of anyone else ever being there. After rushing home, we asked Connor to describe what happened. He told us that while he was sitting on our parents' bed, he saw a man peeking around the corner. He noted that the man was crying, but that he was happy. We were curious and showed him a picture of both of my dad's friends. Connor then pointed out one of them and said that that was the man that he saw. Again, both of these friends passed away before Connor was born, so he didn't know what either of them looked like. Stories submitted by Savannah, Elgin, South Carolina. More kid stories.
A tale as old as time is kids knowing things that they shouldn't know. That is terrifying. If one of my kids pointed that up, like, that's where your friend died, and they were right, I'd be scared.
You got to return the kid, right? You just gotta
send it back.
Yeah.
Take it back to my wife. I don't know, do something with him. Yeah, I don't know. But that's wow, what a creepy thing to know. And the fact that the kid shot up and just like pointed out the window and knew that something was there, that's so scary. And then identified the picture and everything. Things he shouldn't know.
Yeah. So
that's like out of a horror movie, like a scene you'd expect the kid to sit up and be like, "That's where your friend died." Then you get the high-pitched violins from the Insidious movies.
Yeah. And then you get rated one of the most terrifying horror movies to ever exist.
Yeah.
Where's our friend Matt, the director, who can write this scene and we can film this movie? We're gonna be stars, boys.
Yes.
We'll have to credit Savannah for that one. Executive producer. But that's, wow, what a scary story.
Yeah, absolutely terrifying. The one thing I forgot to ask Savannah, and she is in chat tonight, so was the place that your brother pointed out, was it the place of the friend that died that the kid saw later? So was it, because you said there was 2 friends, so was it all the same person? You know what I mean? Like, since there was 2 different friends, the place that he pointed out, was that where the one that he saw died? Was the way I should have worded that in the first place. But
yeah, we all followed right along. You did great.
Yeah, it was the worst I've ever spoke in my life. Which
Savannah has confirmed. It says it was actually.
Okay, so that's really weird, right? Like, it's all the same person. So it's almost like a guardian angel thing. It feels like they're where he is watching over this child and protecting him, is what the way I interpret it. Although it's terrifying, I think it's actually a positive haunting more than anything.
It's strange. It's really strange stuff. And I think it might come down to, unless there's any other further hauntings, it might come down to one of those situations where a ghost comes back almost immediately after death. I don't know how long it was in between the shooting and this sighting, basically, but I do a lot of, sorry, my dog's always making noises behind me. It completely throws me off. But a lot of these hauntings, they come back for to deliver one final message.
Yeah.
For closure, or we've seen in some cases to help solve their own murder, different kind of things like this. You get those kind of hauntings. So, and it's usually like right after they pass away, and then the haunting kind of goes away. I see that in a lot of cases.
Yeah, but there wasn't really like a message delivered, it feels like, on this one. That's why it feels like it's more so he's watching over him.
Yeah, that one seems to be, I wouldn't say a message delivered or like a mystery solved at all. Mm-hmm. Now, it could be one of 2 things. It could be that. It could be maybe this ghost doesn't know if people ever found his body or something, and appeared to this child like, "Hey, this is where I died, just in case you didn't know." And then that was it. Or it could just be like not necessarily trying to solve the case, but it could be them letting know like, "Hey, I'm here. Love you. See you. I'm out." You know, that kind of situation.
For sure.
Savannah says it was 4 or 5 years between the shooting and the sighting, but my other brother pointing out the spot was a few months.
Oh, so yeah, it's 2 different brothers that had 2 different experiences. So very, very scary. but I think it's a good one. I think it's a
Yeah.
good haunting.
Absolutely. Like, that's so tragic. Like two
Yeah.
friends, both of them shot. Sheesh.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. Crazy world we live in. So speaking of children knowing too much, I have one more story here before we hop into what I think is our final one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, all right, let's hop into this one sent in from Sam T. Every Friday, my family would make the trek to the old post office at the edge of town. It was a historical building, complete with creaky floors and faded posters on the walls, and I didn't really like it too much. Neither did my brother Danny, who was only 4 years old at the time. He would complain every time we went because he would get bored and just want to get out of there. One day that changed, however. He asked my mother, he said, "Can I have a lollipop?" My mother looked down at him and said, "I don't think they have lollipops here." But he persisted. He said, "The man told me as long as my parents said it was okay, I could have a lollipop." My mother looked around confused, as we all did, since there was no man working at the post office. There also didn't appear to be any men besides my father inside the post office at the time. "Did you see him, Sam?" Danny asked me. "The man with the funny hat. He said I could have a lollipop." I got down on his level and said to him, "What man, buddy? I don't see anyone." He rolled his eyes as if I was the one that was being ridiculous. "The one behind the counter. He's nice and he has a blue lollipop." I honestly thought it was just his imagination. But every time we went to the post office without fail, he would insist on seeing this man. And I began to feel uneasy about it. Who was this creepy man offering kids candy? My parents warned me about that from time to time. The following week, as we stood in line, Danny was practically bouncing with excitement. "He's here," he told me. The woman behind the counter handed us our packages and looked at Danny, kind of confused. "Who are you talking about, sweetie?" she asked kindly. The man with the lollipop," Danny said, while looking back towards the far end of the counter. The clerk chuckled softly. "Oh, there aren't any men who work here, dear. Just us ladies." Danny looked around confused as if everyone was playing a joke on him. "But he's nice. He said I could have a lollipop." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I tried to reassure him. "Maybe he's just taking a break, okay? We'll look for him next time." As we left, I could feel his disappointment weighing heavily on his little shoulders. I decided to do a bit of digging into the post office's history. It wasn't much, just a few old articles and photos, but what I found sent shivers down my spine. The post office had been around for over a century, and years ago, there was a man who worked there named Mr. Hargrove. He had worked there for many, many years until his death when he had a heart attack. It just seemed like a normal article about the man until I read the final line. He was loved by his community and was known for always having a bag of candy to give out to the children. I kept this news to myself because I didn't want my parents thinking that I was seeing ghosts as well. But it was just that. I couldn't shake the feeling that Danny was seeing a ghost at the post office. The next Saturday, I hesitated before I went in. Danny couldn't wait. He burst through the door, dragging me along, his eyes scanning around for his friend. When we got up to the counter, Danny shouted, "There!" pointing towards a shadowy corner behind the counter. "He's there." I turned, my heart pounding, but all I saw was the flicker of the fluorescent lights and the women who were working diligently, obviously oblivious to Danny's outburst. "What are you talking about, Danny?" I whispered to him. "The man. He's behind you." I glanced over my shoulder again. For a brief moment, I thought I caught a glimpse of something. A figure, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, the brim of his hat casting a shadow over his face. But it was gone in an instant. "Can I have a lollipop?" Danny asked the clerk. The woman smiled, shaking her head gently. "Sorry, sweetie, no lollipops here." That night I lay in my bed, unable to sleep. I thought about the man from the post office, the kind man who had made so many memories for the kids of the town. I wondered if his spirit still lingered in that old post office, keeping watch over the place that he loved. Listener submitted ghost story from Sam T., Black Diamond, Washington. Somebody get this kid a goddamn lollipop! For fuck's sake!
It's all he
Bring the
wants.
lollipop, give it to the clerk, tell him, hand this kid a lollipop. He's starting to see things. Kid needs sugar.
Sugar withdrawals.
Our diabetic son, he needs the sugar. Oh, man.
Oh my God.
But
No, that is creepy though.
Yeah.
It is creepy.
Black
Especially
Diamond,
when
Washington also sounds like the coolest town ever.
I know.
I was like, I immediately hope that there's more hauntings here because I need to actually look into this place. So this one, he had sent it in, names changed for the story. So I don't know if that's actually the name of the guy who died or whatever. But either way, creepy story. Another case, another one. This is like the third one today of kids seeing things that adults can't see. And he was also a kid in this story. He wasn't, I think he was, I don't remember, but he was not a teenager yet. So he also, it sounds like he may have seen something. It sounded like he was a little shaky about it, and whatever he saw disappeared kind of right away. So I wonder if it was one of those situations where the younger you are, the more you could see this kind of sounds like a residual haunting.
Yeah, that's a theory that kids are more susceptible.
Yeah, but he was also, it sounded like Danny was communicating with this stuff. So pretty cool story.
But seeing it out of the corner of your eye too. I mean, I think we've all been there. We've all seen that little thing, and we try to debunk it ourselves. But when you see it as someone else is constantly pointing it out, it's got an extra level of creepy vibes going on.
Yeah, it was right. Sorry, go ahead.
There's a demon theory that the ghosts you see in the corner of your eye are demonic.
There's also another theory from, I believe it was Hans Holzer. Hans. It was either him or Ed Warren. Get your bingo cards out. Who had said that when you see something out of your corner, I can speak today. It's been a long week. Anyways, when you see something out of the corner of your eye, yes, it's a ghost. And I'm like, but not always, right?
But not always.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see my pets out of the corner of my eyes.
Right.
I'm like, whoa, what was that? I was like, my cat. I'm like, all right. So you're wrong there, Ed. Sorry.
Yes, absolutely.
Debunked, I guess.
Yep, we nailed it.
Great job, Dave. You've created your own hidden cat theory.
It's debunked that it's an absolute every time it happens.
You're debunked.
Yeah, it's not always a ghost. There's got to be some other things, a little car driving by, creating shadows, pets moving around, intruders in your house trying not to be seen.
That's right.
Could be anything.
Hope that's not happening to you often.
I know. Burglars. It's always cat burglars every time.
What's the term for when someone like tries to sneakily live in your house for a while? Not squatters, but like
frogging.
Frogging, right?
Yep.
I almost said turding, but it's frogging. I don't know why. That was the first, that was the first thing. That was the first thing that came to my mind.
Turding is when they sneak in and leave the upper decker in the bathroom.
Don't go turding in people's houses. It's significantly worse.
Yeah. Could be the worst thing ever.
It could be.
Youngtown Pizza says supposedly 75% of your peripheral vision is what you think is there, not actually what is there.
Yeah, that's actually evolutionary too. So when you see, it's a survival instinct, like an ancient survival instinct. If you think you see something that's not there, it's actually the same phenomenon as when you feel your phone vibrate in your pocket, but it's not really it's not doing that. It's like a phantom phone ring. People before phones existed would see spiders where they weren't and see snakes where they weren't, and that's your survival instinct kicking in, telling you to pay attention to your surroundings.
Yeah, Rob gets those phantom phone vibrates when he thinks his family is calling him, but then he remembers that they don't exist, so it's tough. Sorry to hear. Okay, so we're down to one final story. This one I wanted to save for last because I found it to be absolutely terrifying, and we'll play this one just in time as Dave is giving out free advertising in the background. So
I got it covered.
Let's hop into our last one of the night. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is a first on Hometown Ghost Stories. You are now seeing Dave tall. So there we go. All right, let's hop into it.
As a kid, it was hard to find friends who understood the things I experienced. I often kept it to myself. However, in the 6th grade, I made a new friend, Lexi, and quickly found out she shared similar gifts and experiences. One of our first sleepovers alone at her house, we decided to binge Harry Potter, eat junk food, and chug Monster Energy drinks. For some context, Lexi's house was a little over 100 years old. Lexi had had many experiences in that house and often hated spending time in her room as well, often only using it to sleep and get dressed. We gathered our slumber party essentials and started our movie binge. At about 12 to 12:30 a.m., Lexi went to the kitchen to refill our snacks and drinks while I prepared the next movie. The house was dead silent. Me and Lexi were the only ones home aside from 2 sleeping cats and 2 sleeping dogs. As I'm getting ready, I see one of the dogs, Copper, stand up and walk over to the stairwell. A low growl started in his chest, followed by the other dog, Daisy. I called for Lexi, and she tried shooing the dogs away from the stairs, claiming that Copper was old, losing his sight, and easily frightened or agitated, and Daisy always follows his lead. The dogs settled, but kept their eyes pinned up the stairs, refusing to move. Lexi brushed it off and came back beside me to watch our movie, when all of a sudden both cats jumped up and ran out of the room and down the hall towards the kitchen. The dogs started again, and chills ran up my spine. I looked to Lexi, who showed me that goosebumps were trailing up her arm. We both stared at each other in disbelief. Something was happening. It was right after this that we heard the loud thud against the upstairs floor. It sounded like it came from the landing right outside the bedrooms. Thinking one of her sisters must still be home, Lexi walked to the foot of the stairs and yelled up, but got no response. When she tried to walk up the stairs, Cooper got in front of her and growled, snarling and showing his teeth. Lexi backed off and tried to settle him, but he wouldn't stop barking. I felt sick to my stomach, and I knew something was wrong. I told Lexi to come back to me and get away from the stairs. When she walked back, she tried telling me it was probably an open window in her sister's room. Birds fly in all the time because she doesn't have a screen and refuses to keep it closed because it gets really hot up there. I took a few deep breaths and tried to calm myself. We turned back towards the TV, and that's when we noticed something at the top of the stairs. It was dark in the house, and even darker upstairs with all the lights off. But to us, it had appeared as though something was struggling to come out of the shadows, like somebody stuck behind a black velvet curtain. I rubbed my eyes, thinking it was me, but Lexi grabbed my arm and dug her nails in hard enough to break skin. I looked at her and tried to get her to let go, but she couldn't. She had her eyes pinned to the staircase. I looked back up, and that's when we saw it. A black shadowy hand gripping the top stair. It pulled itself down one step, thud, and we saw the rest of its figure. Its back was against the stairs, chest facing upward, and its hand was gripping the wooden bar, holding the railing as it was dragging itself down. Thud. Thud. And we saw its head, bent at an odd angle, slamming itself headfirst down the stairs. Scared out of our minds, Lexi went running for the house phone in the kitchen, and I followed. She frantically dialed her parents, and we stood there listening as the phone rang and rang with no answer. As she dialed again, we heard the thud. 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 It was making its way down the stairs. Lexi screamed for the dogs to come, and I grabbed her by the shirt and ran into the bedroom off the kitchen, slammed the door and locked it. We could hear the clicking of the dogs' nails on the tile as they ran to the door. We opened it just enough to let them in and promptly slammed the door back in place. Her parents had finally answered, and Lexi told them to hurry home. Something scary was in the house. Lexi often did this, and her parents never really believed her, so they said they were on their way and hung up. Terrified, Lexi and I squeezed into the closet. The dogs got quiet, but whimpered and whined by the door. The thudding continued, and Lexi counted the steps and whispered, "There's only 2 or 3 more steps, I think." We sat there shaking as we waited for the final thud that shook the floor. A few moments passed, the dogs sighed and settled down, and Lexi and I let go of each other. We waited a little while longer, and I finally got up the courage to open the door. Slowly, I stepped out into the kitchen and peered around the corner and down the hallway. There was nothing. Story sent in by Raven from Salem, Massachusetts.
Nice little heartwarming one to end the night.
Real feel good. That was a scary one.
That might be the scariest listener story we've ever had. I'd have to think back, but that one is very, very creepy.
That was
It's
right
up
up there with the fucking lollipop story. Dude, that is actually horrifying, dude. Ah, man. But in fairness, that's how I go to my front door when I know Rob is waiting to be let in. I just smash my head on every single stair. I'm like, go away, Rob.
Well, that's because you've dislocated both of your shoulders at some location, and you can't move.
That's
so
also why I can't read anymore. So, you know.
That's why you got to slither like a worm at that point.
So there's a little more to the story, and there's some theories tied to it also. So this takes place in, I said Salem at the end there, but rereading it now, it says it was a town just outside of Salem, but didn't specify. So She said she was born in a very spiritual family living just outside Salem. Her mother was a trained Cabot witch. Her grandmother was a trained professional medium and a member of the First Spiritual Church of Salem. And all the kids, she says, were gifted and have various experiences. This was one of hers when she was younger. And right after she opened the door and confirmed that the kitchen was empty and that whatever was crawling down the stairs was gone, both girls jumped because the back door opened. That's when the parents came in. So they spilled the whole story to the parents, obviously in a state of panic. And the parents were like, it's probably just, you probably had too much sugar and you're loaded up on Monster Energy drinks and whatnot. So they just kind of brushed the kids off and sent them to bed. The next morning, and this is what she sent us. She said, the next morning, with daylight streaming into the house, me and Lexi got brave and did some investigating of our own. Her sister's bedroom door was closed and does rattle in the lock, but her window wasn't open. Neither were any of the other windows. The cat stayed downstairs with us, and when they got scared, they ran into the bathroom beside the back door, so it wasn't them. Her sisters were not home, but we then thought it might have been the water heater or some pipes. I hate when my water heater climbs down the stairs backwards after me.
It's so hard to get it back.
Yeah, I assume they're trying to debunk the thumping.
Right.
But
So heavy.
but it might have been the water heater or some pipes because the water heater was located underneath the stairs in the basement. We turned up the heat and waited for it to kick on, and it did make a loud rumble that shook the floorboards a little bit, but no thudding. They checked the staircase for any shoes or clothes that may have tricked our eyes in the dark, but there was nothing. She said, I told my family about it. Now, so this was her friend Lexi's parents were the ones that didn't believe her, and her family was the medium and the spiritual families. I told my family about the story, and they believed it, and that it may have been a spirit just trying to make itself known. But all I know is that it terrified us. So a decade or so passes, and Lexi's family moved, and her mom and her looked into the history of the house. The couple who built it both passed away in the home. The wife passed away after a long battle with cancer, and the husband the husband in his old age had a fall down the stairs with no one living with him. He wasn't found until days later when the mailman noticed him at the bottom of the steps through the front door window. He had tripped at the top, falling headfirst, and broke his neck. His workroom where he built model ships would later be Lexi's room. She said, Lexi and I still talk about the story almost 20 years later, and we always call him the broken neck man.
Wow.
And she asks us specifically, so what was it, the spirit of an old man, a demonic presence out to terrify two kids, or maybe just two girls hyped up on too much sugar alone in a house late at night? I think that it's hard. So, I mean, I guess it could be two kids hopped up on sugar. I think if it was one kid and experiencing it by themselves, but if you have two experiencing the same thing, it's hard to share delusions. I know there's theories of mass hysteria, but I don't think it really happens with two people. I don't know. It's creepy. And I would say probably not a demon. Probably, if anything, if it's paranormal, I would say it sounds like it probably was the spirit of the man who fell down the stairs. That sounds to me like it would make the most sense.
Makes too much sense, yeah. So I would say that's probably it. The most horrifying part of this story was them sitting in the closet, counting the steps, counting the thuds, and be like, oh, there's only 2 steps left. Like, dude, what do you do in that situation? You get out and run because it's still got 2 steps to go down, or
you just burn the house down at that point.
Right.
What else can you do? Is this the scariest residual haunting of all time? Is this guy just reliving falling down the staircase?
We had like a torso one with like a torso crawling across the floor, right? Was that from a regular episode? Or was that listener submitted? I think it was listener, right?
No, I think we actually had more than one torso ghost. I know there was a ghost in the Fredericksburg, Texas episode that we covered where he was the ghost of a guy who was too tall for his coffin, so they cut his legs off and he used to crawl around the floor of the funeral home looking for his legs.
Right.
There was one in a kitchen too, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was.
I think there was one from a listener submitted ghost story. We have a few torso ghosts.
Yeah.
But either way, that one, in my most recent memory, is the most horrifying listener submitted ghost story that I've heard yet.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I don't want to be a torso ghost. Sounds exhausting, to be honest.
It does, yeah, absolutely. So that is that. Geesh. So if you have your own listener submitted ghost story, be sure to send it in via email or on Discord, and we will try to get out to it again. We read an older one today, at least one. Actually, I think 2 older ones today. So if you did send them before, make sure you send them again if we haven't read it out on the show. And also, if you have any updates to any listener submitted ghost stories,
Oh yeah, good call.
definitely let us know about that, especially Lily and other folks that have reoccurring ghost stories that are on these episodes. But these are some of my favorites. Again, we say it every time, but this is the reason we started the show, was to share the unknown ghost stories as well as the big ones. So it doesn't get more unknown than ones that people have never shared before on the show. And if you don't want your name attached to it, you can submit it anonymously. We had a few of those.
Mhm.
And yeah, also if you just want our input on a ghost story, you can send it in and don't have to have it read out on the show. Again, we're not exorcists. We don't know how much we could actually help in that situation, but at least we could maybe connect you with someone who does. So anyways, we got this comment earlier. I hope he's still in chat, from Brian, but it's basically a review. So we will read that one out. It's from Brian M on Facebook. Says, I listen to you guys during the summer, not live usually, but because I like to listen to you guys while I'm at work on my tractor cutting grass. You guys are awesome and deserve 6 stars.
6-star review.
Hell yeah, first ever.
Yep. So thank you so much, Brian. We always love to have you. Appreciate that.
Before we get into other reviews, I have the end of this ghost story that was just submitted from Raven in Salem. She included somewhat of a review. It says, thank you for reading. My family and I are big fans of your podcast. While vending in Salem during the month of October, we love to binge show after show. And it was actually my mom who said I should submit to you guys. So if this gets aired, thanks, Mom.
Oh,
yes.
very cool.
Thanks, Mom, for scaring the hell out of all of us.
And if you see us in Salem in October, A, what the hell are we doing there? And B,
Yeah, it's been a while.
B, say hello.
We got a lot of things to do in October. I don't know if that's on the list, but always love going to Salem. But I think with it, like, I like going to Salem in like August, maybe September. October is just a little too crazy. But
The weekday's not too bad.
I do have some good friends who live in Salem now. So perhaps we have a place to park, which would be cool.
Nice. That's
There
a
you
big deal for October.
It is. It is. Yeah, if you're going to go to Salem, and a lot of our listeners do go there, you got to plan ahead. You got to try to take the train in or something, because in a city that has, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people during the weekend, they have literally like 4,000 parking spots. So you're going to want to make sure that you figure that out in advance and maybe make some reservations or something, because it is difficult to do anything in Salem this time of year. But at least
Or get there early.
Get there very early. Absolutely.
And
Do we have some?
Tess in chat is saying meetup in Hometown Ghost Stories meetup in Salem next year. I don't think it's going to be Salem, but we are already thinking of things for next Halloween season that we're going to hopefully be able to get together in the next few months.
I think with enough of a heads up, a meetup in Salem would be pretty cool.
Yeah, it wouldn't be October, but I think we could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do have one review. This is from M Bravo, titled Still the Best. Just finished listening to Celebrity Hauntings, The Ghost of JFK. Great as usual. But they asked a question in their review. I have a question. I do believe in reincarnation. So if somebody's ghost is seen for years after they're dead, does that mean that soul has not been reincarnated? And if after 62 years it might never reincarnate, will it linger on Earth forever? We do not know. I mean, I don't know. I'll let you guys answer. I don't know how that process would work in terms of reincarnation myself. So I'm not going
to. Right. I haven't looked too much into it, because I don't really believe in reincarnation, but I remain with an open mind to absolutely all possibilities. But I will say that at a certain point, spirits cross over, whether it's right away or whether there's some sort of unfinished business or something, some of them need some help to cross over. I do believe in that. So once they cross over, maybe they could reincarnate, if that's a thing.
Yeah. The thing with any sort of afterlife theory is they're all theories. They're all untestable. And if it's untestable, it's unfalsifiable. And if you can't falsify it, you can't prove it one way or another. So there's no way to say whether it is or not. But I mean, if you're just epistemically speaking, if you want to apply logic to it and say, if you are your spirit can't be haunting if you're reincarnated in another body. But, if you are in the realm of spirits, then I believe that you are disconnected from all forms of logic, time, and matter.
Thank you for saying that so epistemically.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
Me and
can
Rob.
we
Me and Rob.
epically get into the
We knew.
Patreon names?
Yes, we can. Starting with our VIPs. Let's start with Jeremy M. KCW. Look at us making fun of Dave with the smart bit. Look at you for being smart.
Look at Dave with
Idiot.
your philosophy and epistemology, you idiot.
What do you read books?
Yeah. No, word with 3 syllables. Good job.
Jeremy M, KCW, Brandina 77, Kathy F, Ghost Nurse, Janet T, Another Vice. Dave has a new kangaroo onesie with a bottom flap. Tess, Mother McTibbles, and her show reference Fish Captain McTibbles, who's known as Damn It Dave. Thanks. Thank you, Mother McTibbles. We have Jesse is the most handsome, strong, and brave. Dave D, Kate and Steve M, Sharon V, Glitter T's Camming from Washington, Kelly C, Jennifer P, Nick, Donnie N, Inspires Gaming, Allison V, Robert H, Anna C, Jeannie, Mallory from Montana, Mom and Pops W, Papa Squatch, Lisa J, Rob is a night hag MOB. Thank you so much for being VIPs. We appreciate that. And next up, let's hop into the Warren's Wards. And we'll start that one off with Nick Myers, Jeremy M, back to Beth C again. Welcome back to being Beth C again. Sereno, Shawners, Leslie F, Rachel G, Her Lady Spookship, Nefarious Chad Poles, Wahini Pirate, I Am the Bridge Witch, and I Hate Rob, Julie Gooley, Eugene M, Arcade Hunters, The Bottom of Colby's Bottle, Kath Q, Liz Young, DC, Chris Connolly, LBPS founder, next HTGS guest, the other Rachel B, Sarah Cook, Janice G, Lily, thanks again for that ghost story today, Rachel B, if I think it's the other, it's the one who is called the other Rachel B, who sent us one, but either way, Rob's alter ego, the grumpy Nimrod, the least favorite kid not haunting a playground, the creepy twin that can't be trusted, dead Steffe, Stan the man with the ham hands, and human soup. I like that one. That's my favorite today. Next up, Michael M, Tanya C, Jennifer A, Rob's chosen hot dog butthole for sacrifice. Carrie H, Amber R, Branch C, Emily P, Whisper, Shane J, Mrs. Nardozzi, Kitten Clown, Shane O'Mac. I got a special bone for you, thick boy. Not weird. MM. Joe, Trevor S, you can't triple stamp a double stamp. Lloyd, Christina S, Kate C, Chrissy, Kelly C, Isla D, bitty 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 boop boop. Crazy Legs, collector of spoons for my soup collection. West Virginia coal miner, hashtag Jericho. Please put Jesse in the walls of Jericho. Miss Macabre, Michelle, Naroku, Cold Warrior. When Rob can't find a lollipop, he just sucks on the postman's toes.
God, I hate it so much.
D from H-Town, Meta A, Sarah B, Dominica, Monster Mom 04, Wicked Alley, Dark Snark. A cowboy rode into town on Friday. He stayed for 3 nights and rode out on Friday. How is this possible?
The horse is named Friday.
That was quick, Rob. You've heard that one before. All right. Megan S, Morgan S, I'm a snack. Wayne C, Brown Bricks Break, Bring Back, Broke Bricks Boss. Crystal Quinn, a.k.a. not a Rob fan. Thick Boy Freddy's baby mama listening while freezing her nooples off at Demon Spawn's cheer practice. Alicia E. Thick Boy says, Croakley, I knew your partner Mandolph was gutless. I'm going to squish you like a toad. Thanks to that ribbage. Swanee. That's my dog snoring. Come on down to Whiskey Dave's Furniture. Our stuff ain't haunted, promise. Next up, we have Sam from Nepal, Joe R, Al Capone, Huggy Bear, coming soon. Shiloh National Military Park, presented by Jesse. Solar Flare, Mariah M, Kiralee J. You can't talk about your Psalms when you can talk about your John 3:16. Anthony 3:16 says, watch this show. Well done. Cody G.
I can't tell if that was a wrestling reference or a biblical reference.
I think a little bit of both. Yep.
It was a wrestling Stone Cold Steve Austin reference.
Yep. Brandon W, Hooply Whooply, Bridge Witch, and the Polka Guys. Thank you so much for being on Patreon. $3 a month will get you there. You can climb up the tiers and unlock more things, including a limited edition Hometown Ghost Story shirt for next year. You can qualify if you sub as a VIP. Now, I believe whatever is left for the stock of VIP special edition shirts are now on sale. HometownGhostStories.com. Click on the merch tab.
And they are selling out fast.
Yes, get your splendid purple shirt. Again, once they're gone, they're gone. We're not going to make more of those until next year when we make something a little bit different. But they went well. They fit nice. I finally got a shirt. Who would have thunk? After years of working on this show, I finally was provided with a shirt.
So we've already had this argument.
I have been wearing the same clothes for 1 year since the last time I got a shirt. Actually, it was longer than that. My goodness. My
You should
goodness.
change your
These
clothes.
guys, they don't even clothe me. What am I going to do? I'm just a cold orphan, a corphan, if you will. Time to end the show. All right. So thank you guys for tuning in. We will be back on Friday with, what are we dropping on Friday?
Paranormal update, where I'm going to give a little teaser. You will hear an actual Boston accent out of one of us, and it is horrifying. I won't say who did it,
Out of nowhere. Not even intentional, just slipped.
but it was bad, and I did not like it.
We all have actually really heavy Boston accents. We just mask it for the show.
Oh no, this was you were from Lynn.
This was unmasked. Oh, you spoiled who it was. Look at that. Anyways, that'll do it for this week. Thank you so much again. Send in your ghost stories if you did, and get your tickets for our live show coming up October 18th. We'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much.